Welcome back, Go Gunners family. Mikel Arteta admits that certain habits have started to deteriorate in his side. Introduction, a rare moment of brutal honesty. When Mikel Arteta speaks publicly about his Arsenal team, his words are usually precise, controlled, and protective. Since taking charge, he has been a manager deeply aware of narrative, psychology, and the importance of shielding his players from unnecessary pressure. That is why his recent admission that certain habits have started to deteriorate landed with such weight. It was not a throwaway comment, nor was it an attempt to deflect blame. It was a carefully chosen phrase that revealed both concern and accountability. For a manager who has spent years drilling patterns, discipline, and collective responsibility into a squad, the idea of deteriorating habits cuts to the core of his philosophy. Arsenal's rise under Arteta has not been built on individual brilliance alone, but on habits. Habits in pressing, habits in positioning, habits in decision-making, and habits in mentality. To admit those habits are slipping is to acknowledge a deeper issue than form or injuries. It is a recognition that the foundations themselves are under strain. This article explores what Arteta meant by that statement, why those habits matter so much to his project, how and why they may be deteriorating, and what it means for Arsenal's present and future. It is not simply a reaction to one match or one run of results, but an examination of a team at a critical point in its development. Arteta's Arsenal, a project built on habits. From the moment Arteta arrived at Arsenal, he made it clear that success would not come quickly or easily. He spoke repeatedly about culture, standards, and non-negotiables. Training sessions were redesigned, expectations were clarified, and players were assessed not only on talent but on attitude and willingness to learn. Habits became the invisible framework of his work. Players were taught where to stand when the ball was in certain zones, how to react immediately after losing possession, how to protect teammates, and how to manage moments within games. These were not optional ideas. They were repeated daily until they became instinctive. Under Arteta, Arsenal evolved into one of the most structured teams in the Premier League. Their pressing triggers were clear, their build-up patterns rehearsed, and their defensive shape disciplined. The team's improvement was often described in tactical terms, but beneath the tactics were habits that allowed those systems to function. When Arsenal challenged for the title, observers praised their intensity, their unity, and their resilience. Those qualities did not appear overnight. They were the result of thousands of small decisions made correctly over time. That is why any deterioration in habits is so alarming. It suggests not just a dip in performance, but a weakening of the muscle memory that underpins the entire project. Understanding the phrase, what are certain habits? Arteta did not specify every habit he believed was deteriorating, but his language offers clues. Managers often speak in coded terms, especially in public. Certain habits can encompass tactical discipline, mental sharpness, physical intensity, and emotional control. One obvious area is defensive concentration. Arsenal under Arteta have prided themselves on structure without the ball. Fullbacks know when to step inside, midfielders know when to turn space, and centre-backs communicate constantly. When those habits slip, gaps appear, and opponents exploit them quickly. Another habit is pressing intensity. Arsenal under Arteta are most effective when they press as a unit, not as individuals. One player stepping late or hesitating can break the chain. Over time, fatigue, confidence issues, or complacency can erode that collective timing. Decision-making in possession is another key habit. Arsenal's attacking play rely on patience mixed with sharp execution. Players must know when to recycle the ball and when to accelerate. Poor habits in this area lead to rushed passes, unnecessary turnovers, and exposure to counterattacks. Finally, there are mental habits. How players react to setbacks, refereeing decisions, or missed chances matter enormously. Arteta has often spoken about emotional control. A deterioration here can lead to lapses in focus that change matches. The weight of expectation, success as a new challenge. One of the paradoxes of improvement is that success creates new pressures. When Arsenal were rebuilding, expectations were lower. Mistakes were tolerated as part of the process. As the team began to compete at the top, the margin for error shrank. Players who once played with freedom now carry the weight of expectation. Every dropped point is scrutinized, every performance compared to title-winning standards. That pressure can subtly change habits. A player might take fewer risks, hesitate in possession, or lose intensity without realizing it. Arteta himself has acknowledged that maintaining hunger is one of the hardest tasks for a manager. Once a team has proven it can compete, the challenge shifts from belief to consistency. Habits that were once driven by ambition can be dulled by comfort or fear of failure. In this context, Arteta's comment may reflect his awareness that Arsenal are entering a new phase. They are no longer outsiders chasing a dream, they are contenders expected to deliver. That shift requires not just tactical evolution, but psychological renewal. Fatigue and the physical toll of modern football. Another factor in deteriorating habits is physical fatigue. Arsenal's style under Arteta is demanding. High pressing, intense transitions, and constant movement require peak physical condition. Over a long season, especially with domestic and European commitments, maintaining that level is extremely difficult. Fatigue does not always manifest as obvious tiredness. Often it appears as small delays in reaction, slightly slower recovery runs, or reduced sharpness in duels. These tiny drops can snowball into larger issues, particularly in a system that depends on synchronization. Arteta has often rotated carefully, but injuries and fixture congestion can limit options. When players are asked to perform at maximum intensity week after week, habits can erode simply because bodies and minds are stretched to their limits.
Acknowledging this publicly may be Arteta's way of highlighting the need for renewed focus on basics rather than tactical overhauls. When tired, teams must rely even more on ingrained habits. If those habits are slipping, results will suffer. Youth, experience, and the learning curve. Arsenal's squad remains relatively young. While that youth brings energy and potential, it also brings inconsistency. Young players are still forming their professional habits. They may understand what is required, but sustaining it across seasons is a different challenge. Experienced teams often rely on veterans to set standards during difficult moments. Arsenal's leadership group has grown, but the balance between youth and experience is still evolving. When results dip, younger players can become uncertain, leading to hesitancy and errors. Arteta's admission may reflect his understanding that development is not linear. Progress includes setbacks. Habits learned must be reinforced repeatedly, especially as players grow, gain confidence, and face new pressures. Tactical evolution and opponent adaptation. Another reason habits can deteriorate is opponent adaptation. Arsenal's success has made them a target. Opponents study their patterns, pressing triggers, and build up structures in detail. When teams face Arsenal now, they arrive with specific plans to disrupt those habits. They press certain players, block passing lanes, and force Arsenal into uncomfortable situations. If Arsenal respond by abandoning their principles rather than refining them, habits can weaken. Arteta is a coach who constantly evolves tactically, but evolution must be built on solid foundations. If players become unsure which habits still apply and which have changed, confusion can creep in. Clarity is essential, and public statements like this can serve as a reset. Communication and accountability. One of Arteta's strengths has been his communication. He speaks clearly to players behind doors and chooses his words carefully in public. By admitting that habits are deteriorating, he is sharing responsibility rather than blaming individuals. This approach reinforces collective accountability. Instead of singling out mistakes, he frames the issue as a team-wide challenge. That can be powerful in restoring unity, as players are encouraged to look inward rather than point fingers. It also sends a message that standards remain high. Even when results are acceptable, performance levels must meet internal benchmarks. Arteta has always insisted that success is measured by consistency of behavior, not just outcomes. Historical parallels, lessons from other teams. Football history is full of examples where great teams declined, not because of lack of talent, but because habits slipped, intensity drops, standards relax, and small compromises accumulate. Arteta, having worked under Pep Guardiola, will be acutely aware of how elite teams fight this tendency. Guardiola often speaks about the importance of daily habits, even after winning major trophies. The moment a team stops doing the basics with the same hunger, decline begins. By raising this issue early, Arteta may be attempting to prevent a similar trajectory. He understands that deterioration rarely announces itself dramatically. It begins quietly, in training sessions, in small decisions, and in marginal moments. The role of the manager, resetting the standards. Having identified the problem, the next step is response. Arteta's role now is to reinforce standards without creating panic. That balance is delicate. Too much criticism can undermine confidence, while too little can signal acceptance. Training sessions may become more intense, with greater emphasis on fundamentals. Video analysis may focus on moments where habits slipped, not to assign blame but to restore clarity. Leaders within the squad will be encouraged to set examples on and off the pitch. Arteta has shown in the past that he is willing to make tough decisions to protect standards. Whether that involves rotation, tactical tweaks, or renewed emphasis on discipline, his actions will reflect the seriousness of his words. Fan perception and media interpretation. Public admissions like this inevitably generate debate. Some fans see honesty and leadership, others worry it signals deeper problems. Media narratives can amplify concerns, framing the comment as evidence of decline. However, context matters. Arteta did not suggest collapse or loss of belief. He spoke of certain habits, implying specific, correctable issues rather than systemic failure. His tone was reflective, not alarming. For supporters, the challenge is patience. Projects evolve, and even strong teams experience moments of recalibration. Understanding the importance of habits helps explain why performances can fluctuate even when talent remains. Looking ahead, opportunity and reflection. Every challenge contains opportunity. By identifying deteriorating habits, Arsenal have a chance to strengthen their foundations. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share.